Recruitment meetings are going on all the time, and lists will be extensive, but one name that I thought was really interesting this week that was put into me was that of the Wolves winger Pedro Neto. Now, well, hello again from the streets of Gosforth, and I know you expats sometimes like a little weather update. Well, yeah, here we are, guys. It's cold and it's windy. It's not very pleasant at all. Quite why I insist on trying to produce video weekly in this part of the world, I don't know. My wife is also asking me on a fairly regular basis, where's all the hairspray gone? Well, yeah, it's needed. But anyway, we'll plough on. And I've been at Eddie's press conference this morning. There was plenty to get through there. A really newsy morning. And the first place to start is Eddie Howe confirmed the exclusive story I brought you during the week with regards to Kieran Trippier and his injury. Trippier will miss the next two matches. That's down at Chelsea on Monday, then Manchester City in the FA Cup. He won't go away with England. The injury, the calf problem, will be enough to keep him out until the end of the month. Now, there's a chance he could return against West Ham on March the 30th. My information is that is pretty much 50-50. It'll depend how Trippier reacts to treatment over the next couple of weeks. Now, yes, that is a blow. How can it not be a blow? Kieran Trippier has been, if you're talking Newcastle's player of the season, and we'll talk about one of these players just shortly, you know, you'd say it would be Trippier, Fabian Schär and Anthony Gordon in there in the conversation. Is that harsh on Bruno? This is going off into an entirely different video, isn't it? Something to revisit. It's a good subject, that. But anyway, no, just going back to Trippier, the point I'm making is, how can losing a player we all think so much of not be a blow? But it is lessened by the emergence of Tino Livramento, and it is a chance for him in his natural position as well. We've seen Livramento come in at times at left back, you know, once or twice on the right. I think he's looked absolutely fabulous in both positions, but now he's going to get a little run. 2 games certainly, you know, potentially 3, I think, is the likelihood. And you know, let's see how he gets on, because the summer business has been knocked in by myself as much as anybody, really, you know, and I said that really early in the season, just to revisit that I thought they should have done more to impact the starting 11 now in terms of this campaign. Anyway, again, that's a different video. We'll probably come to that again in a few weeks' time when we reflect on this campaign. But the one signing who I just wish we'd seen more of, really, is Tino Livramento, because wow, you know, when he has played, he could have, if he'd actually had a run this season, you know, in a perverse world, if Kieran Trippier had been injured this year, and thankfully he hasn't been injured, if he had been, Tino Livramento might have actually not only established himself as Trippier's replacement at Newcastle, but potentially in the England setup as well. I think he's that good, and it's the one position where Newcastle do have a real genuine backup option. Now, what else was there in terms of injuries? Nothing really new, to be honest with you. Just quickly, everyone else who played last weekend against Wolves, they're okay going into the squad on Monday. Matt Targett, he won't make it. You know, I think Eddie Howe said, yes, while he potentially could be in the squad, they prefer it if he had a little bit of extra time, so we shouldn't expect to see him, and I think they'll go with pretty much the same team, with Livramento in for Trippier, as started against Wolves. Now, one player we won't be seeing down at Chelsea is Lewis Hall, because it's his parent club. Even if it wasn't, even if he was allowed to play, we still wouldn't see him, because Lewis Hall, sub-unused as he's now become known. Yeah, I was going to say that mystery deepens. It's not really a mystery. Eddie Howe has spoken on the record about it as to why Lewis Hall isn't being used. I think it's 11 appearances so far this season. 4 of them starts, 3 of which he came off at half-time. You know, we've spoken a hell of a lot about that. One viewer just giving a little toot there, which is very nice. So yeah. And Eddie was pressed again on this morning. You know, what is the situation there? Now, my understanding is that Lewis Hall become the Newcastle player next season isn't entirely dependent on what Lewis Hall does. The criteria, part of the stipulation, is Newcastle's league position. I don't know the exact number on that, but I believe it is a fairly low league position. I'm sorry, guys, for those of you who like to enjoy the mansions of Elmfield Road just over my shoulder there. It's a wind tunnel, it really is, and I think going forward, Elmfield Road, unless the residents club together and do something about it, yeah, that's going to be a selfie stick free zone in the future. Just far too windy, doesn't lend itself to good sound. Some might argue something which distorts what I'm saying isn't the worst thing in the world. Now, here is a news line that I revealed exclusively in my NUFC notebook column, which is available this afternoon at Mail Online, and that is that Newcastle's search for a new sporting director has begun, and that they've enlisted the services of internationally renowned recruitment firm Odgers Berndtson. Yet they've got offices in 31 countries around the world, real global international reputation, and that just shows the ambition and the intent of the club to bring in the best in the business. Now they've been enlisted. From what I understand, conversations have already taken place. They've identified who the top candidates would be. I think that's a pretty extensive list in the piece, which I'll put in the link in the description below. One or two names are mentioned in there. There's also as well, you know, the possibility that there could be a redrawn role for Steve Nixon inside the club. He's so well thought of. He's impressed the new owners since they came in. So yeah, I think there still might yet be a little restructuring and a redrawing of how they work, but really interesting news that a recruitment firm have been brought on board to lead the search for Dan Ashworth's replacement. The latest on Dan Ashworth, as I understand, talks are ongoing. I still believe a fee somewhere in the region of £15 million would see swift progress. They aren't at that number just yet, so we'll have to keep watching that one. But yeah, things are moving now behind the scenes at Newcastle, also within the notebook column as well. Listen, recruitment meetings are going on all the time, and lists will be extensive, but one name that I thought was really interesting this week that was put into me was that of the Wolves winger Pedro Neto. Now from what I understand, Newcastle are looking at right wingers to upgrade on Miguel Almiron, who we all thought could have potentially left to go to Saudi Arabia in January. That didn't happen, but as far as I know, they are still looking to improve that position. Neto is one of the names on the list. I will say I love him as a player. I've watched him for a couple of years now. I think he's quick. I think he runs hard, he runs fast in both directions, really skillful. Only 23, big improvement left in him. Goals does have to improve, but we've seen the improvement in a player like Anthony Gordon under Eddie Howe. So yeah, why couldn't they do the same with someone like Neto, or anyone for that matter? It's just interesting that they are looking at players in that position. I've been up at the training ground to see Anthony Gordon this week. I had a fantastic hour with him. Now, there is a certain perception of Gordon that exists, and I don't mean on Tyneside, because I think, you know, us guys, you guys, we've got a flavour of what he is now, but I do believe there is a wider perception. In his words, I had an hour with him, you know, his first exclusive newspaper interview as a Newcastle player. He was tremendous company, he was open, he was candid, he was honest, he didn't shy away from anything. I'll put the link to that interview in the description below, but he said, you know, that scally perception of himself does exist, and having spent time with him, not that my mind needed to be changed. I knew there was a different version. I've said that since the start of the season. I've spent a little bit of time with him out in America as a group of journalists, and seen him train and seen him play at close quarters over there. But honestly, to have that time one-on-one with him, like I said, my perception wasn't changed, but it was altered in a way whereby I left thinking even more of him. To sit there as a 23-year-old, and at the end of it, he got up and he stood there and he said, I've never done something like this before. I've never had an interview where we've explored such a range of subjects. And he found himself, you know, speaking so openly about his childhood, about perception, about the issue down at Brentford. His answer he gave to that was absolutely tremendous, and the anxiety he felt in the days after it. How he spoke about Eddie Howe was so strong in terms of, he said, you know, never mind what Eddie Howe's done for me as a football player, what he's done for my life as well. So please, if you can, click on the link in the description below. It'll take you through to the Mail Plus interview. That you've got to sign up. That is free for the first month, but you know, loads and loads of great content on there, which takes us on to Anthony Gordon and England. Now, again, you know, I keep on saying this, we spoke brilliantly about England during the interview as well. Did not hide away from his ambition to go to the Euros in the summer. You know, he said his partner was nagging him to book a holiday, and so far he's refused to do so. He's told her that Germany is very nice, and I really hope that he does get that inclusion on Thursday in Gareth Southgate's squad. Eddie Howe was asked about that this morning. While he said, you know, he wouldn't interfere, and that's Gareth's decision. He knows what he's watching. He'll have his own opinion. You know, Eddie spoke glowingly about him, and it's the level of consistency, really. And what I love, I say this all the time, don't I? I love footballers who play, players who play. And Anthony Gordon gave a great quote whereby he said, availability is the best ability. And I fully back that. Anthony Gordon's only missed one game this season, and that was because of suspension. All that while, yes, there's been, you know, one or two tiny little dips, but nothing whereby you would ever say he was out of form. He was just for small little periods out of brilliant form is what you would say. You know, he's been a consistent performer. 15 goal contributions now this season, 10 goals, 5 assists, and I honestly think he is worthy of inclusion in that squad for the forthcoming friendlies, both of which I'll be at against Brazil and Belgium. So we'll have to keep an eye out on Thursday. But when you think of Foden and Saka, yes, wow, you know, two tremendous players. They're probably nailed on starters and they're some way ahead. I honestly think having a player like Gordon in the squad, and honestly he is of good character, this myth that he might not be a good tourist, a good traveller, a good player around the squad. Does that exist among some? Perhaps it does, but it's not true. If it does, it is a myth, you know. And I just think the way a manager, a man like Eddie Howe speaks about him, someone who is in many ways cut from the same cloth as Gareth Southgate. I've got a lot of time for both as people, you know, spent a bit of time around Gareth with England now. I've got one or two thoughts on him as a manager separate to Eddie, but I think as a person, he's fundamentally a decent guy. And in Anthony Gordon, I think they've got one of those two, allied to a tremendous player. So if you're watching Gareth, put him in that squad. Now, Newcastle have got a game down at Chelsea on Monday. Yeah, we'd forgotten about that, hadn't we? And someone said to me earlier, what do you think will happen? What's your prediction? Well, I honestly don't know, because you don't know which version of Newcastle is going to turn up, and you don't really know which version of Chelsea is going to turn up. And to that end, I'm going to probably go a draw, I think, on it. But can I make a case for Newcastle winning? Well, absolutely I can. And that is if they do what they did last Saturday. Now, against Wolves, I said this in the post-match video, didn't I? I think it was a victory for a game plan well executed, a game plan hatched by Eddie Howe, recognising what he had, recognising what he was up against. And for me, Eddie Howe would disagree with this, but I think for the first time in a long time, I saw a definite shift away from what we've seen in recent weeks, and adapting to a certain situation and making it pay, and in the end running out comfortable 3-0 winners. And for that, the players and the management deserve nothing but applause. I'd like to see them do something similar again, because in many ways it was a regression. It was back to the style and the pragmatism of the season where they avoided relegation when Eddie Howe first came in. Now, Eddie has always wanted to move away from that. Honestly, conversations with him, it was why they signed Sandro Tonali. He wanted to move to a more possession-based, passing, you know, where they're in control. That's what he wanted to go towards. Saturday wasn't that. They were in control by not being in control, really, if you know what I say. You know, they ceded possession, they sat in, they protected themselves, and they played to their strengths on the break with that pace. Joe Willock coming back in was absolutely huge in enabling that to happen. I think that's the way to go forward between now and the end of the season. It's a bit of a shop-soiled season. It's damaged. There's been players out injured. It hasn't gone exactly as they thought it would for various reasons. Sandro Tonali's ban, you know, all of that. So why not, during the remaining 11 matches, just apply pragmatism, let the opposition have the ball, play on the break. I hope they continue to do that on Monday. I think they will, because I think that is what the resource lends itself to. And if they do that, and if they can rediscover an identity they thought they'd left behind, really, like I say, you know, previously that was almost a previous version of Newcastle, but if they can rediscover that and make that work between now and the end of the season, I think it might just be the thing that takes them back into Europe. Now, speaking of identity, or a lack of it, I noticed Amanda Staveley this week spoke about Steve Bruce, and she said, yeah, that the former manager didn't even want to come into training following the takeover. Now, I honestly think that quote is being taken a little out of context, in that I think Bruce didn't want to be there for reasons, you know, around his own toxicity, I think was what he said at the time. So I think that has been taken a little out of context, but I honestly think it could be taken another way. There were episodes previous to that, before the ownership came in, whereby, not that he didn't want to come into training, I wouldn't go that far, but certainly, you know, we had the case where he was flying back from Portugal. The players turned up to train in the morning. Steve Bruce was on a flight back from a weekend away, and the players were furious, absolutely furious that he wasn't there. And I know that come the end, a large section of the squad thought that he was taking the Michael, so to speak. So while I think Amanda Staveley's comment, like I say, has been taken a little out of context, I certainly think there's a different argument to be made for Bruce and his application to training and the want to be there prior to new ownership coming in. So yeah, but I thought it was interesting. It generated a little bit of coverage this week, and yeah, he will continue to give us something to talk about. I will say that for Steve, he always gives us plenty of copy. Now, speaking of Steve Bruce, that has just reminded me of Big Joe Linton and his contract situation. As far as I'm aware, there's been no real update, no progress per se. Eddie Howe was asked about that again this morning. He said, you know, the situation hasn't changed as far as he is aware, and it remains the case that, you know, Joe Linton has got an expectation of a salary. Newcastle are somewhere below that. Will they meet in the middle? You know, let's hope so. I think, you know, Eddie reiterated that today, how keen he is to have that situation resolved. Thank you again so much for watching, guys. As I said, I'll be down in Chelsea on Monday bringing you my post-match thoughts after that game. Below the line here, please click on that link through to the Anthony Gordon interview. I would love it if you could sign up. Like I said, the first month is free. Have a read of it. One of the, you know, really was one of the most engaging, one of the better word, best interviews I've done in a long time. Really enjoyed my time with him. I think you'll find it real fascinating reading. Link as well to the WhatsApp channel. Don't forget as well, loads going on there, especially around a match day. You get your team news, your voice notes, video reports, everything else is posted in there, and that is completely free too. So yeah, thank you again for watching, guys. I'm now about to find a warm coffee house and try and edit out all the wind and nonsense from this video. But yeah, please click like, subscribe and comment as well. Always forget that. Okay, see you soon, guys. Bye bye.